Good afternoon. My name is Eric Rutherford, and welcome to Theory. So good to see all of you here today. We've got a quick lesson, so we'll be moving pretty quickly through this. So get your pencils out and get ready to write. Today we're going to be talking about cadences. So we've already learned about harmonic sequences. We've already learned about triads and inversion. We've already learned about all sorts of great things in music. But now it's time to start talking about form, the architecture of music. How music is put together. And one of the most important building blocks in that form is a cadence. A cadence is the stopping spot, a resting place in music. Your ears are already accustomed to hearing it because we've been listening to music with cadences in it all semester. But now we're going to be able to identify exactly what those cadences are. Think about cadences in terms of language. A cadence is punctuation, so like a period, or a comma, a question mark, an exclamation point. All it basically is a place in the harmony where we feel like a complete thought is done, and we're moving on to that next thought. Okay? We've got 5 different kinds of cadences we're going to cover today in short. And then in further lessons, we will tear each cadence apart and talk about all the rest of it. But today, we're just going to introduce them. So, the first cadence that we're going to talk about today is the authentic cadence. This is probably like the most important cadence because these cadences are the cadences that bring us to a true stopping place in the music. And there are 2 different kinds, as I said. There is a perfect authentic cadence. Think of this as like the exclamation point in music. And there's the imperfect authentic cadence, which is like a period. Very strong, but not quite as definitive as a perfect authentic cadence. So let's take the perfect authentic cadence first. Perfect authentic cadence, abbreviated PAC, is a 5-chord to a 1 chord. And if you look at the TV, you'll see our harmonic sequence that we're already quite familiar with. So it's a 5-chord or a dominant chord going to a 1 chord, and it has 2 very specific rules that must be followed for it to be a perfect authentic cadence. The first rule is that it must be in root position. Must be, no ifs, ands, or buts, it must be in root position. The second interesting rule for a perfect authentic cadence is that in the soprano part in this situation, or in the highest sounding voice, in the 1 chord of the tonic chord, you must have the tonic pitch. So, let me play this for you, and you're going to hear immediately that you've probably heard me play this a million times in other places. So, 5 chord in root position, to a 1 chord. An imperfect authentic cadence, as I already mentioned, is like a period. So basically, anytime we're not following those 2 rules, 5 chord to a 1 chord, root position with tonic as the highest sounding pitch in the tonic chord, it is an imperfect authentic cadence. So we've got some choices here. We can go a 5 to a 1 and just have them in inversion. We can even go from 7 to 1. Because 7 is still a dominant chord. All we have to do is make sure we don't follow those rules, and we have an IAC, or an imperfect authentic cadence. And you can see right here, I've got a 5 chord going to a 1/6 chord, so our 1/6 is in inversion. It can't be perfect, it's got to be imperfect. So let me play it for you. Now remember, this is not going to sound significantly different than the perfect authentic cadence. It's still definitive, just slightly weaker. So I'm going to use a 7 to a 1. So here's 7 to 1. Our next cadence we're going to talk about is a tricky cadence. It's called the Deceptive Kings. This is a really interesting cadence because composers use this to fool you, essentially. Our ears, because we probably have heard a lot of Western music throughout the course of our lives, maybe. Our ears, or even just in this class, our ears are accustomed to hearing that dominant to tonic relationship. And so in the Deceptive Kings, composers play around with that subconscious need for 5 go to 1. So instead of 5 going to 1, it's deceptive, or it fools you. 5 goes to another chord. Most frequently, probably 85 or 95% of the time, 5 will go to a 6 chord. So let me show you how that works. So you're playing, you're going along your little progression. You got a 1 chord, 2 chord, throw in a 5 chord, and you think you're going to go to 1. That's where your ear wants to go, but instead of going to 1, you go to a 6. It's really a great tool for composers to use when they're coming to a spot where they feel like they might have almost completed a thought, but yet it's like, but wait, there's just a little bit more on the end here, and I want to add it in. So I'll use a deceptive cadence, and then later on in the thought, I'll finish it out with what everyone's ear is waiting for, the perfect authentic cadence. Our next cadence is the half cadence. So the half cadence right here, abbreviated HC, is any chord going to 5 at one of those cadence points, at one of those resting stops in the music. This is probably the most unstable cadence of all of them. So you should think of this as like a comma. Think of it as like a comma. This is like the comma cadence. So I'm in the middle of a thought, and then I get to a spot where that thought's sort of dying out just a little bit, and I go, oh, wait, we're still going. Okay? So it's really just a resting spot, not a definitive ending. And these are probably the most frequent cadences you're going to run into outside of the perfect authentic cadence at the end of a piece of music, which, as we've learned in tonal harmony, is the end goal for everything. We must get to that tonic chord at the end. So, half cadence, any chord to a 5 chord. So we're just trucking along here. Do you hear how unstable that sounds? It doesn't sound like we want to be done. There's more to talk about. So, it's like, I'm going to the store, and I'm going to buy some cookies. So it's really two ideas, but they revolve around each other. Our final cadence that we're going to talk about today is the plagal cadence. This is a really interesting cadence, sometimes called the church cadence, because this particular cadence is used in a lot of Christian religious music. If you've ever been to a church service or heard a hymn on television or something like that, you might have heard this cadence. This cadence, abbreviated PC, is a 4 chord to a 1 chord. And it's not often used as a definitive ending for anything. It's more often used as a tag. So that's why it's called the church cadence, because often in Christian church music, there is an amen at the end, and that amen is usually a plagal cadence. So we might be going along, and we get to a big old PAC, so we got a 5 to a 1 chord, and then we just add on a little tag of a 4. To 1. And of course it doesn't have to be used in just church music. It can be used all over the place. There's a lot of interesting opportunities for some delightful harmonies where you can throw in that plagal cadence. So kind of like a period, maybe just not quite as strong as an imperfect authentic cadence or perfect authentic cadence. So let's briefly go back through all 5 of these. And then remember, at your next lesson, we'll go through and tear each one apart and talk about when it's best to use it, what are the best part writing tools for it, and all of that other kind of good stuff. But at least now you have a sense of how they go. So, perfect authentic cadence, it's a 5 to a 1, must be in root position, must have tonic in the upper voice of the 1 chord. So 5. My tonic pitch. IAC, it's a dominant to tonic relationship, but we're not following one of those rules, so we're going to do a 7 to a 1. Still strong, like a sentence. Or like a period, excuse me. Deceptive Kings, that's where they trick your ear. So 2, 5, And then our half cadence, comma cadence, anything to 5 at a resting spot. So we're going to do we'll do a 3 to a 5 this time just to be interesting. 3 to a 5. Unstable, doesn't feel like we're quite finished with an idea. And finally our plagal cadence, 4 to 1. Well, I hope you've enjoyed learning about cadences today. As I said, we will tear them apart in more detail in future lessons. But this gives you an idea of the form of, the beginning form that we're learning about and about one of the most important building blocks. I hope you've enjoyed your lesson. Thank you.